My father didn't just miss small moments. He missed the milestones that shaped the person I became. Birthdays, recitals, competitions, all collected in a silent archive of empty chairs. But the day he didn't show up for my wedding, something deep inside me finally split. I remember gripping my bouquet, hands trembling not from nerves but from a final, reluctant understanding. The chair reserved for him sat at the end of the aisle like an accusation. No text, no call, not even the lazy courtesy of an excuse. The absence was so loud it drowned out the music. People told me later that the ceremony was beautiful, but all I remember is the hollow echo where my father should have been. And that night, on my honeymoon, I told myself I would never expect anything from him again. I meant it at the time. I convinced myself I was done waiting for a man who never showed up for anything that mattered to me. For years I stayed true to that promise. I built a life that didn't rely on anyone's approval, especially his. But life is strange. It shifts in ways you don't expect. In the morning, my boutique resort chain Aurelia Haven crossed a staggering valuation and appeared across national headlines. Everything shifted again. My phone buzzed endlessly with congratulations from people I barely remembered. My inbox overflowed. My team celebrated. And buried in the noise was a text from a name I had long stopped expecting to see. Family dinner tonight. 7 p.m. important. No congratulations. No warmth. Nothing personal at all. I stared at the message for several minutes, feeling 1,000 old wounds scrape open inside me. My father, Drayden Vale, had always been a man who treated emotions like an inconvenience and relationships like optional accessories. My mother, soft-spoken and perpetually apologetic, spent my childhood whispering, "He's under pressure, Elara, be understanding." My brother Idris, polished and praised, became the golden image my father held up like a trophy. And me, Elara Vale, was the quiet, unremarkable daughter who learned early that affection in our home had entrance requirements I never met. For years I tried to earn even a fraction of his attention. But after the wedding, something hardened inside me. I redirected everything inward: my drive, my ambition, my hunger to be seen. That drive built Aurelia Haven from the ground up. My first property was nothing more than a weather-beaten lodge at the edge of the Cascades' creaky floors. Cracked windows, and a smell that suggested no one had loved the place in decades. But I poured myself into it. I worked night shifts at the front desk, scrubbed hallways myself when staff quit, learned plumbing from videos, and handled guests with a smile even when exhaustion nearly swallowed me whole. I rebuilt the lodge, then rebuilt myself alongside it. Years later, I owned 3 properties that travelers adored. Reviews poured in describing warmth, safety, attention to detail. Everything my childhood home lacked, I intentionally created. But through it all, my father never once acknowledged my efforts. Not a single call. Not a single appearance. Until the day my success made the news. And suddenly his silence cracked, not with pride but with expectation. I didn't know it then, but walking into that family dinner would mean walking into the last chapter of the person I used to be. People assume dysfunctional families are loud shouting, doors slammed, dramatic scenes. Mine wasn't. The Vale household was quiet in a way that felt unnatural, like everyone tiptoed around feelings we pretended not to have. My father's presence filled every corner of the house without him ever saying much.
He didn't scold, didn't yell, he simply dismissed.
A shrug here, a silent glance there, a cold nod that meant he didn't have time for me. I learned early that invisibility wasn't just possible. It was expected. My mother lived in a state of anxious softness, constantly smoothing conflicts that never actually healed. Idris lived in my father's orbit like a bright star. Straight A's, sports captain, the charming heir. The son who made our father beam at parent nights. I spent my childhood journaling in quiet corners, trying to craft worlds where daughters like me didn't have to beg to be seen. When my father missed my wedding, that final thread snapped. I decided that the only approval I needed was my own. So I built Aurelia Haven. The lodge in the Cascades became my sanctuary and battlefield at once. I learned how to negotiate contractors twice my age, how to handle guests who tested my patience, and how to stretch a microscopic budget with stubborn creativity. There were nights I slept on the lobby sofa because I was too exhausted to walk upstairs. Nights where storms knocked out the power, and I guided terrified families by flashlight. Nights where I cried quietly in the housekeeping closet so I wouldn't break down in front of guests. But every struggle sharpened me. Every win stitched something strong into my spine. By year 3, the lodge had a waiting list. By year 5, Aurelia Haven expanded. Investors started calling. Travel blogs featured us. Pictures of the airy lobbies, warm lighting, and mountain views spread across social media. When the valuation hit, it didn't feel like a miracle. It felt like a reward I had earned in solitude. But the moment my triumph went public, the quietness of my childhood returned in a new, unexpected form. My father's text, family dinner, 7 p.m., no emotion. No acknowledgement of what I built. Just an instruction like I was still the girl expected to obey. I wasn't going to attend for him. I attended for me. I needed to see what he looked like after years of ignoring me only, to reach out the moment I became valuable in a way that benefited him. But before I could go, my CFO, Kira Hollings, showed up in my driveway with a folder thicker than any contract I'd ever signed. Inside were documents, defaulted loans, unpaid debts, foreclosure warnings, all attached to my father's name. His empire, Vale Industries, was drowning. Kira spoke gently, but the truth landed like a quiet earthquake. My father didn't want to congratulate me. He wanted a financial lifeboat, and the lenders? They were willing to sell his entire debt portfolio. And they were willing to sell it to me, for a fraction of its value. I stared at the papers for a long moment before answering. Buy it, I said. Those 2 words changed everything. By dawn, I owned the debt that owned my father. And the girl he once overlooked was about to walk into that dinner holding every card he once controlled. The country club where my father summoned us shimmered with warm lights and polished marble. A place built for men like him, powerful, respected, quietly feared. I walked inside wearing a tailored navy dress, a quiet contrast to the chaotic storm inside me. My partner, Rowan, squeezed my hand before I entered the private dining room. Remember, he whispered, strength doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop letting them hurt you. His words steadied me. When I stepped inside, 4 faces turned toward me. My father straightened immediately, trying to reassert the old dynamic. Elara, he said, as if the name tasted unfamiliar. You're late. I met his gaze without shrinking. No, I said quietly. I arrived exactly when I intended. The conversation unfolded like an old play I had watched too many times. Idris recited my father's excuses, convinced he was protecting the family legacy. My mother apologized for things she didn't break. My father spoke about duty, responsibility, and the importance of helping one's family. But not once did he say he was proud of me. Not once did he acknowledge the years I spent building something alone. When he finally admitted that Vale Industries was under pressure, Idris leaned forward with a thin smile. You're doing well, Lara. You can support the rest of us until we're back on our feet. My father nodded like it was already settled. Like my worth existed solely in how useful I could be to him. I lifted the folder I had brought, the one filled with the documentation of every debt he owed, every collapsing property, every overdue contract. Their faces paled as I placed it gently on the table. This dinner, I asked softly, is about money, isn't it? My mother began to speak, but I continued. You didn't call because you care. You called because you're drowning. My father slammed his fist against the table, fury flashing across his face. How do you know any of this? I opened the folder. Because I now own all of it. The silence that followed was absolute. Idris grabbed the papers, his hands trembling as he read. My mother gasped. My father turned a shade I had never seen, part disbelief, part rage, part something dangerously close to fear. How dare you interfere in my affairs, he hissed. I built everything we have. I shook my head. No, you built everything you had. I built mine alone. I placed one final envelope on the table. 30 days, I said. To vacate all properties under my ownership. My father's face twisted as he spat. You're no daughter of mine. For the first time, the words didn't cut. They clarified. I stood. You're right, I whispered. And you made sure of that long before tonight. I walked out as voices rose behind me, shouting, crying, blaming, but none of it reached me anymore. Outside, the night air felt like freedom. Rowan opened the car door and studied my face. Are you okay? He asked softly. I thought about the empty chair at my wedding. About years of trying to earn love that should have been freely given. About the girl who once waited by the phone. And then I understood something simple and true. I'm finally okay, I said, and for the first time, I meant it. The next morning, sunlight streamed through my kitchen windows, as if the world itself had been waiting for this version of me. I didn't lose a family that night. I simply stopped losing myself. If you like my story, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories. And tell me in the comments, from where are you hearing my story?